Hey guys, it's Skybird, and got an interesting video for you today because I've been thinking for a while about how to mold, how to create a mold for an impossible piece. This is something I've wanted to do, and I think I'm going to put some caveats in there. I think I've figured it out, but it is going to be a very tedious process, and it is going to be a multiple stage process as well. I don't know if it's going to work yet, so I'm not going to reveal too much about the process itself yet until I have actually tested it. I want to know that the time I put into it is going to, pay off, right? The piece in question is this right here. It is obviously a piece a lot of people have wanted for a long time. I haven't seen anybody, well, that's not technically true. I have seen some resin casters try to make this, but I haven't seen any successful pieces yet. And I think the main reason for that is because this piece has 5 through holes on this side here and another 5 here. Plus it has these small pin-sized holes in each of these, well, pins. And so the main question is, how do you mold this in a way where that doesn't bind up, where you don't have parts sticking together, right? And also, how do you do so in a way that is lossless, meaning without a loss of detail? So, like I said, I've been considering working on a process which I may attempt to do today. I am technically missing one of the pieces that I'd really like to have for this process. The process that I've come up with is a clayless process, meaning it only requires the silicone and maybe some hot glue or something for some sprues, but that's basically it. However, in being clayless, it is multiple steps. So the main thing that I want to do is I want to block off these horizontal holes, because if I were to just pour this or pour silicone around this, not only is it going to go all the way through these pinholes on the side, as you can see those are hollow, but it's also going to go through in this direction as well. It would physically lock the piece in place. Even if I were to pour this at a halfway height, for example, if I was going to make a 2-part mold and I poured the mold up halfway on its thickness, that's still enough to get in there and create a bond in 3 separate places. Now, it's not necessarily impossible to do, just difficult. And so one thing you could do is you could block off those holes from the outside, but then the silicone that goes through this is still going to be connected in a straight line, and it's going to be connected to these square-shaped little grommets of extra silicone material that aren't going to want to pull out in either direction. It's going to create a mechanical bond that will very quickly wear out the piece, if you're even able to get the piece out in the first place. And not to mention, any resin casts you make in that are going to be under a lot of stress if you go to pull those out as well, which could cause cracking. So the next question is, if we are able to block those off, then what do we do about these holes? And I think the main process as it stands right now is that we need to fill those holes, but nothing else, right? So we would need to have this upside down, essentially, and fill these holes, but just fill them and allow that to cure. Basically flip it back over and do the same thing on the top side. All of this we need to do while these holes going across the body are still plugged. We don't have to worry about the pinhole in the center. We don't have to worry about these side holes yet. That's not an issue. We just need to worry about filling these pinholes and doing so in a way that does not connect in the center. So essentially, the idea is that the holes going across the body here will have silicone going up inside of them, but not connecting to these pinholes on each side. They will touch, those surfaces will touch, but they will not connect. At least that's the plan so far. Now, I know I haven't gone into a lot of detail. As I mentioned, this is a several-step process. I have concluded that this might take upwards of 20 hours to create a mold, so it is in my best interest to create a mold that can handle multiple of these pieces at once. It's not ideal to create a mold that only makes one of these if you have to sink 20 hours into each mold for this piece, right? That's not practical. You would have to charge pretty exorbitant prices, and at that point, yes, people would buy them in new colors, of course, but is it worth it? Is it worth doing that over painting or something like that? So I'm currently trying to consider a method for casting multiple of the pieces, and as mentioned, If I do a single piece, it is probably best to do a 2-part mold. However, if I want to save as much space as possible, it may actually be better to do another modification on a 1-part mold, but it's done in several successive steps. So it's similar to a cut mold, except you never cut, meaning that it would split down the edge, except it wouldn't be all jagged lines like this. You don't have to make cut marks. You're actually working the cut into the mold itself, if that makes sense. So essentially you'd be casting it or molding in layers. That's the plan right now. As I mentioned, it is an extremely difficult piece. It is going to require a lot of work on the back end to make sure that I'm prepared to actually start creating it. And several, like I said, several steps. If it works, then I will try to go more in depth with the process. As I mentioned, this took me several hours to think about exactly how to approach a piece like this. And I have seen, videos and tutorials and things like that online about filling holes in things, for example. Oftentimes it is, holes that all go in the same direction, which is relatively easy. Or it is large cavities, which is also kind of easy, but there is some thought that needs to go into that kind of stuff. But the scale we're talking about here is, fractions of an inch. That's difficult. You can't put aluminum inside here to fill space or pack it with clay, not without causing some problems in the future. And not to mention, at some point you are going to create loss, right, in those methods. So if I have thought out the method that I'm working on so far correctly, it should be completely lossless, meaning that the piece will come out looking nearly exactly like this, with the exception of the sprue marks, which I plan on placing where the sprue marks already are on the original piece. These 2 holes here, there are 2 on each side. This side just has some indentations, and I plan on doing the same for both. On one side, the sprues are only going to act as a brace. They're only going to hold the piece up level. They're not going to actually act as ventilation of any kind. However, on the other side, we are going to add a vent so that air can go out, of course, and a funnel so that air can go, or so that liquid can go in. Those will not be attached. And preferably, we would also want to vent each of these pins, because it would be fairly easy for bubbles to get trapped in those areas. And yes, you could turn the mold to try to work out bubbles, but that's pretty thin. These pins are not a solid object, but they're fairly thin-walled, and that could lead to some issues with bubbles just staying in those locations because of surface tension. And you'll also have issues with, obviously, leakage and things like that. So it's probably most preferable to put vents in those locations. I don't think it's strictly necessary, but it can't hurt. So that's the thought right now. As I mentioned, it's a process. It's going to be kind of terrifying, to be honest. When I say it's 21 hours work, give or take, that's mostly not labor time. It's waiting time, right? Silicone has to cure. Certain things have to be, done in a certain order. So a lot of it is just waiting through steps, making sure parts that you need to bond, parts that don't need to bond, don't bond. It's that kind of crazy stuff. So that's pretty much it for this video. I just want to go ahead and talk about that for a handful of minutes. As I mentioned, that's basically the thought process of how to approach a piece like this. It's not necessarily the solution as of yet. I still want to test my method first to see if it even works. Obviously, if it doesn't work, then oh well. And I'll probably run some casts alongside this, so I'm not just burning time completely. But, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Wish me a lot of luck on a piece like this. I really hope to be producing these very soon. It is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, as have we all. And if you do enjoy my content and you want to find me elsewhere, you can always check out the links that I leave in the description. You'll find my Discord there, as well as Instagram. You can also find a link to my Patreon. I'm not going to say you need to donate or anything like that, but if you'd like to help and support the channel, you obviously can. I plan on having a set of exclusive videos, exclusive content in general, for the people that do Patreon, as well as an exclusive channel in the Discord server as well. And yeah, so hopefully, sometime later this week or maybe next week, I can reverse this color scheme if I want to. That'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care. I guess like and subscribe if you haven't already.